The day we took our engagement photos, the photographer said my smile looked a lot like my brother Wesley's. Stephanie Lundberg, my fiancée, immediately had Wesley change into the same white tuxedo. Perfect chance to get a few keepsake shots. When it was time to pick the photos, everyone crowded around Wesley's. Mom said he was born to wear a white tux. Dad said he looked more distinguished than me, the actual groom. Stephanie studied the screen for a long moment, then pointed at a photo of Wesley looking back over his shoulder. Let's put this one at the wedding reception. It looks great. I asked where my photo was supposed to go. Only then did she seem to remember I was there. You and Wesley look so much alike. The guests won't even notice the difference. Besides, he's never getting married. It's not every day he gets to wear a custom tux. I let out a quiet laugh. From the time we were kids, life had always been harder for Wesley. That meant I was the one who had to give in. If he wanted something, I was expected to hand it over. If he couldn't have it, neither could I. Even my wedding had to become the dream he never got. I slipped the only photo of Stephanie and me out of the album. I was standing beside her, trying hard to smile. Now it felt like I was looking at strangers. Spring hadn't failed to come. I'd just spent too long standing in someone else's shadow, waiting for it. This time, I was done waiting. I fed our photo into the studio shredder while Stephanie fixed Wesley's tie. At the sound, she glanced over. Nate, it's just a picture. Don't make a scene. It's embarrassing. Wesley sat on the couch looking sorry. Is Nate upset? We can use his photo at the reception instead. I don't mind. Mom grabbed his hand and frowned at me. Your brother was born with a heart condition. He's rarely this happy. Do you really have to ruin it? Stephanie handed the invoice to the clerk. We'll use Wesley's photo at the reception. Put 2 of Nate's on the digital display so he doesn't feel too bad. I stared at the shredded strips inside the machine and said nothing. Afterward, Stephanie drove us to the luxury hotel hosting the wedding for the menu tasting. The private dining room had dark red tablecloths. A menu sat beside me, but she didn't even let me open it. Cut all the seafood and spicy dishes. Replace them with mild, steamed options. Wesley's heart can't handle anything too intense. Add a few more hearty soups. The banquet manager hesitated and looked at me. What about the groom's preferences? Stephanie finally glanced my way, that familiar impatience in her eyes. Nate isn't picky. He's always been easygoing. Just do what I said. Wesley coughed softly. Stephanie, Nate likes spicy food. This is his wedding tasting. Don't change everything because of me. Stephanie poured him a glass of warm water, her voice soft. Don't worry about him. He'll eat anything. Drink some water. The first dish was fennel chicken soup. The sharp licorice smell hit me, and my stomach twisted. My fingers dug into the edge of the table. Stephanie knew fennel made me sick. Back in college, she brought me fennel soup when I had a cold. I threw up so hard outside my dorm I couldn't stand. She took me to the hospital and told the doctor, I'll remember. I'll never let him have fennel again. I covered my mouth and rushed to the restroom. Dropping beside the toilet, I threw up until tears ran down my face and bitterness burned my throat. Footsteps stopped outside. Stephanie leaned against the doorframe, sounding exhausted. Nate, Wesley finally has an appetite, and you had to ruin everyone's meal? Even if you're jealous I swapped your reception photo for his, you don't need to pull this pathetic act. We're about to get married. Grow up. I wiped my mouth, my voice raw. You two enjoy the meal. Let him have the wedding too. I'm not marrying you. She froze then laughed. Using marriage as leverage? That's getting old. Wesley's voice carried down the hall. Stephanie, should I not have come? Nate seems really upset. Stephanie turned and walked away, tossing one last line over her shoulder. Calm down. Don't make me come back and comfort you later. I didn't go back to the private dining room. I took a cab home alone. Wedding decorations filled the apartment. White ribbons and warm string lights framed the windows. On the nightstand sat the paintbrush Stephanie bought me on our first trip to the art store. I picked it up and called my mentor. Professor Grant, I've made my decision. I'll be in Lynen Bay in a week. Is the studio still available? The line went quiet for 2 seconds. Nate, are you sure? I stared at the future Mr. and Mrs. decal on the window. I am. The lock clicked, and Stephanie walked in carrying a takeout bag from the hotel. She set it on the table, then noticed the brush in my hand. Wesley said you didn't eat, so I brought you plain oatmeal. Don't drag this out. I slipped the brush back into the drawer as her phone buzzed. A message from Wesley lit up the screen. Stephanie, I want to add a line under the reception photo. Can it say, your groom? Stephanie locked her phone like nothing had happened. Wesley likes to joke around. Stop reading into everything he says. I dumped the oatmeal into the trash. Her face hardened. So now you're refusing to eat just to get back at me? I didn't answer. The doorbell rang. A staff member from the wedding planning company walked in carrying 2 boxes of invitations, beaming. Mr. Nielsen, the magnolia invitations you designed are here. Our boss said they turned out beautiful. I crouched down and opened a box. My fingers froze on the paper. Half the invitations were gone. Each one was sealed with hand-painted magnolia branches and embossed magnolia petals. I'd spent more than 2 months getting them right. I looked at Stefani. Where are the rest? She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear like it was no big deal. Wesley loved them, so I gave him half. He's writing in the names of his support group friends. It'll make the wedding feel livelier. They're my wedding invitations. She frowned. You don't even have that many friends. The rest are enough. If you run out, just send digital invites. Wesley peeked in, a stack of addressed invitations in his hands, his voice quiet. Nate, don't blame Stefani. I was just jealous. I'll probably never get the chance to send out wedding invitations. Stefani took them from him, her voice gentle. Just keep writing. Don't worry about Nate. He gets upset easily. He'll get over it. The wedding planner stood there, caught between smiling and saying nothing. I neatly stacked the invitations that were left. The rehearsals this afternoon, right? She nodded. Yeah. The aisle and ceremony stage are all set. Ms. Lundberg said there's one last part of the ceremony we need to confirm. That afternoon, Stefani drove Wesley to pick up my parents. I took a cab alone. At the hotel, I found out what that one last part was. White roses covered the ballroom. The MC held the ceremony schedule, looking uneasy. Mr. Nielsen, Ms. Lundberg wants to walk down the aisle with your brother before the ceremony. Then you'll make your entrance. Can you confirm that order? I looked at Stefani. She answered like it was perfectly reasonable. Wesley's health isn't great. I want to walk down the aisle with him first so he can experience what it feels like. What about me? She held my gaze. You'll come in after. It doesn't interfere. He only gets this one chance. You'll have years. Phoebe, the wedding coordinator, spoke up carefully. But Ms. Lundberg, the opening walk is usually for the bride and groom. If you walk with the groom's brother first, it might look a little. Mom cut her off. Look like what? Wesley suffered his whole life. What's wrong with letting him live out his dream at his brother's wedding? Dad nodded. Nate, stop being so petty. Wesley isn't stealing your moment. Wesley lowered his eyes, the corners turning red. Nate, maybe we should forget it. I don't want people getting the wrong idea. Stefani brushed a wrinkle from his tux. They won't. And if they do, I'll explain. You just worry about looking handsome. I stood in a dark corner, out of reach of the lights. Suddenly, I didn't feel like arguing anymore. Anything I fought for would just be taken from me again. The MC held out the ceremony schedule. Mr. Nielsen, would you still like to sign off on it? I took the pen but didn't sign. Instead, I folded the schedule and slipped it into my bag. That night, Stefani slept in the guest room. Wesley was a light sleeper. He claimed he was anxious about the wedding, so he'd recently moved into our apartment. Through the closed door, Stefani read him a bedtime story, her voice soft and steady. Don't be scared. I'll stay by your side the whole wedding day. I sat alone in the living room, canceled our honeymoon tickets to the Maldives, and booked a one-way train to Lynden Bay for 7 days later. The confirmation popped up on my phone. At the same time, Wesley's quiet laugh drifted from the guest room. I turned on the shredder and fed the remaining invitations through one by one. Stefani came out and froze at the scraps covering the floor. Nate Nielsen, have you lost your mind? I pushed in the last invitation and met her eyes. Before she could say anything, her phone lit up again. Wesley had sent her a photo. He'd written, "Your groom," across the back of the reception picture, with a red heart underneath. I unplugged the shredder as Stefani walked into the guest room with her phone. The door didn't shut all the way, and her voice slipped through the gap. Wesley, don't write stuff like that. Nate might get the wrong idea. The next day marked 7 years since Stefani and I got together. Before leaving that morning, she set a reservation card on the dining table. 7 tonight. Skyline Restaurant. I'll make it up to you with a real date. Let's forget everything that happened yesterday. I stared at the card, and for a second, I almost believed her. At 7, I put on her favorite white shirt and waited by the restaurant window. At 7:30, my phone rang. Chaos filled the background on Stefani's end. Medical equipment, hurried footsteps. Wesley's having heart palpitations. I'm outside the ER. Go ahead and eat. Don't wait for me. I tightened my grip on the fork. Is it serious? She paused, then her voice went cold. Are you asking because you're worried about him? Or because you're mad I'm missing our anniversary again? I said nothing. After we hung up, I packed the untouched food and went to the hospital. The room door was cracked open. Wesley was already awake, propped against the pillows. He looked way healthier than I expected. Stefani sat beside him, holding a velvet box. She opened it and took out a pair of ruby cufflinks. The clasps were engraved with the initials W. Wesley Nielsen. A month ago, she'd taken me to have them custom-made. She said the rubies looked good against my skin, and planned to give them to me the day before our wedding. She fastened them onto Wesley's cuffs, her voice soft. This color suits you better. Your wrists are so slim. They look better on you than anyone. I stood outside the door, the takeout growing cold in my hands. Mom came down the hall. The second she saw me, her face darkened. Wesley almost died. And you're dressed like that? All you care about is your anniversary. You're heartless. Dad frowned. Wesley's sick. Stop upsetting him. Stefani stepped out too. Her gaze dropped to my bare cuffs, as she'd only just remembered. About the cuff links. I'll get you another pair later. When I didn't answer, she frowned. Nate, don't make a big deal out of it. They're just cuff links. I looked at her. For 7 years, I told myself she was just soft-hearted, that she cared about someone who was sick, but would never crush me to do it. I was wrong. I gave a small nod. No need. Back at the apartment, I took the paintbrush from the drawer. Beside it sat a thick scrapbook packed with 7 years of memories, movie stubs, postcards, train tickets, and every love letter she'd written me. I shoved it all into a black trash bag with every gift she'd ever given me and carried it downstairs. The second I opened the dumpster, the sour stench hit me. I didn't hesitate. The bag landed with a dull thud. My phone buzzed. Phoebe had sent the final rehearsal schedule, along with an updated seating chart. A new display had been added beside the reception area. Best wishes from Wesley's support group. Phone in hand, I thought of the stack of invitations Wesley had been holding. He was bringing his guests to my wedding. The next day, I went to the hotel. Phoebe was directing workers as they set up the new display. It was covered in photos and messages from Wesley's support group. At the center was the shot of him in the white tux, glancing back over his shoulder. When Phoebe saw me, she looked embarrassed. Mr. Nielsen, Ms. Lundberg said it was a surprise display. She added it last night. I pointed at the photo. Where's the reception portrait? Phoebe handed me the tablet. The reception homepage no longer showed a photo of Stefani and me. It had been replaced with a solo portrait of Wesley. Your groom was gone. In its place was one line. May every regret be met with kindness. Who picked that caption? Phoebe glanced toward the door. Ms. Lundberg approved it just now. Stefani walked in carrying a cup of warm water. She handed it to Wesley, then looked at me. Nate, good. You're here. Wesley's support group is coming, so I already added seats for them. What about my co-workers and friends? I asked. She shrugged it off. They can sit farther back. Wesley's friends aren't in great health, so they need to be closer to the entrance. I looked at the names shoved into the corner of the seating chart. My college roommate. The professor who'd once praised my paintings. The only former co-worker I'd invited. Stefani gave my wrist a gentle squeeze. A wedding is for the guests. Don't stress over the seating, okay? Wesley sat in his wheelchair, his eyes reddening again. Nate, are you still mad at me? Maybe I shouldn't come. Mom immediately glared at me. Wesley's pushing himself just to attend your wedding. What more do you want? I pulled my hand from Stefani's grip. I never said he couldn't come. Stefani gave a satisfied nod. That's better. At lunch, Wesley suddenly clutched his chest and started gasping. He said a specialist in the next city could see him, but the only opening was the morning of our wedding. Mom panicked and grabbed my arm. Nate, cancel the daytime garden ceremony. Move it indoors tonight. Stefani and the rest of us need to take Wesley to Dr. Morgan. No one's going to deal with your wedding on top of that. Stefani didn't hesitate. An evening ceremony works better anyway. It'll be too windy outside for Wesley. We'll be back that afternoon, so nothing will be delayed. I looked at her. So we're skipping the first look, family photos, and the outdoor shoot. Her voice stayed soft. They're just formalities. You've always been the understanding one. I knew you'd be fine with it. I nodded. Fine. We'll do it that night. She relaxed. Don't be so cold. After the wedding, I'll get you a new pair of cufflinks. I said nothing. That evening, I went back to the apartment, opened my laptop, and changed my train ticket to Lynen Bay to 10 on the morning of the wedding. Then I scheduled a second-hand pickup for 6:30 the next morning. Once everything was set, I tucked the old paintbrush into the bottom of my suitcase. Wedding morning arrived. Stefani helped a bundled-up Wesley into the car. Mom carried his medication bag while Dad rushed the driver. Stefani rolled down the window and looked at me. Take a cab to the hotel and get ready. Be good. Tonight, I'll give you a wedding you'll never forget. Leaning against her shoulder, Wesley gave me a faint smile. Thanks for all the hard work, Nate. After the car disappeared, I went back upstairs. The second-hand pickup crew arrived right on time. Clothes, books, everyday stuff, even the pothose plant, went with them. The apartment was empty in no time. The future Mr. and Mrs. Decal still clung to the window, almost mocking me. At 10, the train pulled out of the station. I deleted Stefani's number and my parents' contacts, deactivated every social media and messaging account, pulled out my SIM card, and dropped it into a trash bag. Third-person POV. At 7 that evening, the hotel lobby glowed with light. Stefani wheeled Wesley through the entrance while his parents walked beside them, wearing tired but composed smiles. The wedding coordinator spotted them and hurried over. A mess. Lundberg, the groom never showed up. His phone's off, and no one can reach him. The air in the grand ballroom of the Grand Hyatt was thick with the scent of 5,000 imported white roses. Classical strings played softly from the balcony, a gentle background hum that was supposed to usher 300 guests into a night of romantic celebration. Instead, the room felt like a pressure cooker. What do you mean he's not here? Stefani's voice dropped an octave, tight and dangerous. She smoothed down the front of her lace gown, her knuckles white against the ivory fabric. Did you check the groom's suite on the 9th floor? Did you check the lounge? Phoebe, the coordinator, looked pale. She held an iPad against her chest like a shield. Ms. Lundberg, we checked every room. We checked the parking garage. His name isn't on the hotel register. His suit was never picked up from the tailor downstairs, and his phone goes straight to an automated message saying the line has been disconnected. Mom scoffed, stepping forward with her arms crossed, her silk shawl slipping off her shoulder. Oh, don't mind him, Phoebe. He's just pouting. He's probably sitting in the coffee shop down the street, waiting for Stefani to go beg him to come in. He's been throwing tantrums all week because we took Wesley to the specialist this morning. Dad shook his head, a look of profound disappointment hardening his face. Unbelievable. His brother barely survived a flare-up this morning, and Nate is playing hide-and-seek on his own wedding night. He's 30 years old and acting like a spoiled child. In his wheelchair beside them, Wesley adjusted his white suit jacket. The ruby cufflinks, the ones engraved with WN, caught the overhead chandelier's glinting a deep blood red. Stefani. Wesley lowered his head, his voice raspy, trembling with familiar fragility. It's my fault. I shouldn't have gone to Dr. Morgan today. Nate must be so angry that we moved the ceremony to the evening. If he doesn't show up, we can just cancel everything. I don't want you to be embarrassed. Cancel? Mom's voice cracked. Why should we cancel? Look at all these people. Half your father's business partners are out there. Look at the display we built for your support group. Stefani didn't listen to them. A strange, cold prickle was crawling up the back of her neck, under her lace collar. Nate was quiet. He was accommodating. For 7 years, if she told him to wait, he waited. If she told him to move, he moved. Even when he got upset, he just turned quiet, went to the kitchen and made tea. He had never shut off his phone. He had never missing a scheduled event in his entire life. Give me your phone, Stefani said to Dad. She grabbed Dad's phone and dialed Nate's number. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Please check the number and try again. She dialed again. Same flat, robotic voice. She opened WeChat. She searched for Nate's profile. The conversation history was gone. His profile picture, a photo she had taken of him painting by the window 3 years ago, had been replaced by a default gray icon. The handle didn't read Nate anymore. It read account deactivated. Phoebe, Stefani said, her voice unnaturally calm. Call Luke. Luke was Nate's college roommate, and the only close friend Nate had invited to the wedding. He was supposed to be standing in the back row with Nate's former co-workers. 2 minutes later, Phoebe led Luke into the hallway behind the stage. Luke was wearing a simple dark suit, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He didn't look worried. He looked utterly disgusted. Where is he, Luke? Stefani demanded, stepping into his space. Where's Nate? Hiding? Tell him to get his ass in here right now. The guests are sitting down. Luke looked at Stefani, then glanced past her at Wesley sitting in his pristine white tux, flanked by Nate's parents. Luke let out a dry, ugly laugh. Hiding? Luke asked, tilting his head. Stefani, are you seriously asking me where your groom is? He turned off his phone. Mom shouted from behind Stefani. He abandoned his own bride. Do you know how much money we spent on this venue? Luke turned his gaze onto Mom, his eyes cold as ice. Mrs. Nielsen, you didn't spend a dime. Nate paid the deposit out of his savings from his first design contract. And as for where he is, Luke pulled his phone out, tapped the screen, and held it up to Stefani's face. It was a screenshot of a text message sent at 9:45 a.m. that morning. From Nate to Luke, thanks for being a real friend for 10 years, man. Don't bother coming to the venue tonight. There won't be a wedding. Eat something good. On me. I'm leaving. Stefani stared at the blue text bubble. Her vision blurred for a fraction of a second. Leaving? Leaving where? To the apartment? He's gone, Stefani, Luke said, lowering his phone. He's been packing his life into boxes for a week while you were busy buying ruby cufflinks for his brother and putting Wesley's face on his reception banner. That's impossible. Stefani's voice cracked, losing its composure for the first time. I was at the apartment yesterday. His stuff was there. His clothes were in the closet. He scheduled a clearance crew for 6:30 this morning, Luke said flatly. I know because I helped him pick the service. By the time you were driving, Wesley, to your precious specialist, Nate was standing on the platform at the train station, tossing his SIM card into a trash can. The hallway fell dead silent. The distant sound of the string quartet playing a romantic waltz drifted through the heavy velvet doors, sounding absurdly out of place. He left. Mom stammered, her face suddenly turning pale. Without telling us. Over a few invitations? Over a photo? Over everything, Mrs. Nielsen, Luke spat. Over 7 years of you treating him like a spare tire for your golden sick boy. Hey, Dad stepped forward, his face red with fury. Watch your mouth. Wesley has a heart condition. Then let Wesley marry Stefani. Luke yelled back, his voice echoing down the corridor, shutting Dad up instantly. Since he's wearing the groom's tux, wearing the groom's cufflinks, sitting under the groom's banner, and taking the bride to the hospital every time he gets a hiccup, let him take the vows too. You guys clearly don't need Nate anyway. Luke turned, ripped the white rose boutonniere off his lapel, slammed it into the trash bin beside the door, and walked out. Stefani stood frozen in the middle of the corridor. The lace of her veil felt heavy, suffocating, dragging her head down. She looked down at her hands, trembling violently. Stefani. Wesley wheeled his chair closer, his hand reaching up to touch her arm. Don't listen to him. Nate is just trying to scare you. He loves you so much, he would never actually leave. Let's go tell the guests there's been a slight delay. We can wait for him. Stefani looked down at Wesley's hand on her sleeve. She looked at the pair of ruby cufflinks resting against his wrists. W.N. Wesley Nielsen. A wave of sudden, violent nausea hit her, identical to the way Nate had looked when he smelled the fennel chicken soup 3 days ago. She yanked her arm away from Wesley's touch so fast that he recoiled, his face flashing with hurt. Don't touch me, Stefani whispered. Stefani. Mom gasped. Without another word, Stefani grabbed the heavy train of her wedding dress, turned around, and ran toward the exit. The taxi ride to the apartment felt like an eternity. Stefani didn't even wait for the driver to stop completely before she shoved a $100 bill into his hand, threw open the door, and sprinted up the stairs in her wedding gown and heels. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. He's there, she told herself frantically, stepping onto the 3rd-floor landing. He's just testing me. He wants me to apologize. He wants me to beg. I'll apologize. I'll buy him 10 pairs of cufflinks. I'll take him to the Maldives. Tomorrow. I'll throw Wesley's banner in the trash. She reached door 302. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped her keys twice before finally getting the brass key into the lock. She turned it. Click. The door swung open. The smell hit her first. It wasn't the warm scent of lavender laundry detergent, or the faint smell of oil paint that always lingered whenever Nate was home. It smelled of clean bleach, cold dust, and emptiness. Stefani stepped inside. The living room was completely bare. The sofa was gone. The coffee table where they had eaten takeout for 4 years was gone. The string lights and white ribbons she had put up on the windows had been peeled off, leaving faint watermarks on the glass. The only thing left on the living room window was the white vinyl decal in the corner. Future Mr. and Mrs. She stumbled into the master bedroom. The bed frame was gone. The mattress was gone. The built-in wardrobe stood open, its interior completely empty. Not a single hanger remained on the rods. She rushed into the bathroom. His toothbrush, his razor, his towel gone. She ran to the kitchen. The cabinets were wide open. The cups they had painted together at a pottery class 3 years ago were missing. The fridge was unplugged, its door left wide open, completely dry and empty. In the middle of the empty living room floor sat a single black plastic trash bin. Stefani fell to her knees in her pristine wedding dress, the lace catching on the cold hardwood floor. She grabbed the edge of the trash bin and pulled it toward her. Inside sat the studio paper shredder. It was full to the brim with thin, hand-painted strips of paper, the magnolia invitations Nate had spent 2 months designing, hand-embossing, and painting, line by line. He had fed every single remaining one into the blades until there was nothing left but confetti. Beside the shredder lay a heavy black trash bag. Stefani tore the bag open with her fingernails. Movie stubs, train tickets from their first anniversary trip to the mountains, a pair of custom leather shoes she had bought him for his birthday 2 years ago, a dried bouquet of baby's breath from their 500th day together, and at the very bottom lay a thick, leather-bound scrapbook. Stefani pulled the scrapbook out with trembling fingers. She opened the cover. Every single page had been methodically stripped. The photos of them laughing together, the love letters she had written him during her business trips, the little sketches he had drawn of her while she slept, all of them had been ripped out or cut through with an X-Acto knife. On the last blank page of the book, written in clean, black ink, was a single line in Nate's handwriting. I handed over my childhood, my parents, my clothes, and my quietness. I won't hand over the rest of my life. Stefani clutched the empty scrapbook against her chest, her body curling inward. On the bare floor, a sharp, agonizing scream tore out of her throat, breaking the dead silence of the empty apartment. Nate, she sobbed, pressing her face into the cold paper. Nate, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please come back. Please. The bare walls only offered back a hollow, echoing silence. Footsteps hurried up the stairs behind her. Mom, Dad, and Wesley walked into the apartment. They took in the empty rooms, the bare floor, and the white decal on the window. Dad's jaw dropped. He really cleared everything out. Mom stood in the doorway, her hand over her mouth, her face turning gray. He sold the furniture? He threw away our family photos. Wesley stood in his white suit, looking around the empty space. His face twitched slightly, a strange mixture of shock and panic settling into his features. Stefani. Wesley walked over, crouching down beside her, reaching out to wipe a tear from her cheek. Don't cry. He's being heartless. If he can walk away from you over something so small, he never really loved you. I'm still here. I'll always. Get your hands off me. Stefani whipped her head around, her eyes bloodshot, feral, and consumed by a terrifying rage. She shoved Wesley away so hard he fell backward onto the hardwood floor, landing heavily on his wrist. Stefani. Mom shrieked, rushing forward to scoop Wesley up. Are you crazy? He has a heart condition. Shut up. Stefani screamed at Mom, standing up, her wedding gown dirty and torn at the hem. Shut up. Both of you. Look at what you did. Look at what we did. She grabbed the ruby cufflinks from Wesley's wrists, tearing the delicate silk of his shirt sleeves as she yanked them free. You wanted him to wear a white tux. Stefani laughed hysterically, throwing the cufflinks against the bare brick wall. You wanted him to have the wedding. You wanted him to have the invitations. He gave them to you. He gave you everything. And now Nate is gone. Are you happy now? Wesley cradled his bruised wrist, his face pale, tears springing to his eyes. Stefani. I didn't know. I thought Nate was fine with it. He was never fine with it. Stefani yelled, her voice cracking into ragged gasps. He was dying inside every single day while we trod on him. And I was too blind, too stupid, too arrogant to see it. She ripped off her veil, threw it onto the floor beside the trash bag and ran out of the apartment into the night. 6 months later. Lynden Bay. Lynden Bay was a coastal town 300 miles south of the capital. The air smelled of salt, pine needles, and fresh rain. At the end of a quiet cobblestone street sat the Magnolia Studio, a bright, 2-story building with floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the sea. Inside, the studio was filled with the warm scent of turpentine, linseed oil, and brewed coffee. Nate stood before a massive 6-foot canvas, wearing an apron splattered with blue and white paint. He held a wooden palette in his left hand, his right hand moving with fluid, confident grace across the fabric. The painting was titled Spring Light. It depicted a lone figure standing on a towering cliff, turning their back on a dark, stormy valley toward a vast, golden sunrise breaking over the ocean. Nate, the gallery curator from Chicago, is on line 2, Professor Grant called out from the doorway, stepping into the studio with 2 morning pastries. He wants to buy the entire unshadowed collection for the autumn exhibition. Nate set his brush down in a jar of spirits, wiping his fingers on a rag. He smiled, a real unforced smile that reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. Softly. Tell him the collection isn't for sale as a bundle, Professor, Nate said smoothly. I'm keeping the anchor piece for the local museum. Good boy, Grant chuckled, setting the pastries on the wooden workbench. You look well, Nate. Really well. Nate looked at his reflection in the glass window. His cheeks were fuller now, healthy color restored to his skin. The faint, perpetual shadow beneath his eyes was entirely gone. He no longer woke up at 3 a.m. wondering if he needed to run out to buy heart medication or check if someone was breathing. He no longer ate plain oatmeal to make someone else feel comfortable. He painted when he wanted to paint. He ate spicy seafood hot pot with his studio colleagues on Friday nights. He slept 9 hours a day. He was finally living his own life. His old phone number was gone. His old social media accounts were dead. He hadn't searched for the name Stefani Lundberg or Wesley Nielsen a single time since he boarded that 10 a.m. train 6 months ago. To him, those people belonged to another lifetime, a pale, suffocating dream he had finally woken up from. His phone on the counter buzzed. It was a local call from the Lynen Bay Arts Association. Nate answered. Hello, Nate Nielsen speaking. Mr. Nielsen, hi. The receptionist's voice sounded slightly hesitant. There are 3 people standing outside the main gallery downstairs. They've been waiting since 7 this morning. One of the women, she says she's your fiancée. Nate held the phone to his ear. The ocean breeze blew through the open window, rustling the linen curtains. Gently. He didn't freeze. His heart didn't leap. He felt no surge of anger, no wave of panic, no lingering ache. There was only a vast, serene expanse of indifference. I don't have a fiancé, Nate said calmly into the phone. If they are blocking the entrance, please ask security to escort them off the property. Mr. Nielsen, please. A hoarse, desperate voice cut through the receiver as if someone had grabbed the phone from the receptionist's hand. It was Stefani. 5 minutes later, Nate walked down the spiral staircase into the main exhibition hall of the gallery. The hall was quiet, sunlight streaming through the skylights illuminating 30 of Nate's recent works. Standing in the center of the room was Stefani. She looked unrecognizable. The polished, sharp, impeccably dressed businesswoman was gone. She wore a simple, dark trench coat that looked far too big for her thin frame. Her face was gaunt, dark purple hollows carved deep beneath her eyes. Her long hair, usually kept in a sleek bun, hung loose and tangled over her shoulders. Behind her stood Mom and Dad. Mom looked 20 years older, her hair streaked with silver, her shoulders hunched. Dad stood beside her, leaning heavily on a wooden cane, his face lined with deep exhaustion. Wesley wasn't there. When Stefani saw Nate step off the last stair, her eyes widened. She took 3 frantic steps forward, her hands reaching out, but stopped 5 feet away when 2 uniformed gallery guards stepped in front of him. Nate. Stefani's voice was a broken whisper, tears immediately pooling in her eyes. Nate, oh God, it's really you. Nate stood behind the guards, his hands tucked casually into the pockets of his linen trousers. He looked at her the way one might look at an unfamiliar customer who had walked into the wrong store. Ms. Lundberg, Nate said, his tone perfectly polite, perfectly even. This is a private gallery space. If you are here to view the art, tickets are available at the front desk. If not, I'll have to ask you to leave. The formal, icy Ms. Lundberg hit Stefani like a physical blow. She staggered slightly, clutching her coat around her waist. Nate, don't talk to me like that, please, she wept, her hands trembling as she pulled a small velvet box out of her pocket. Look what I brought. She snapped the box open. Inside lay a brand new pair of custom platinum cufflinks, set with clear, brilliant blue sapphires. Engraved on the inside clasp were the initials NN. Nate Nielsen. I had them made, Stefani sobbed, stepping closer, holding the box out like an offering to an angry deity. The sapphires match your eyes when you paint. I threw away the rubies, Nate. I threw away everything. I cut off all business ties with your brother's support group. I haven't spoken to Wesley in months. Nate glanced at the sapphires, then looked back at her face. They're very nice, Nate said simply. You should sell them. Sapphires hold good resale value. Nate. Mom burst into tears, shuffling forward past Dad's cane, her hands clasped in prayer. Nate, my son. Please. Look at your mother. We were wrong. We were so wrong. Dad's eyes were red as he bowed his head. Nate, come home. We canceled everything with Wesley. We told him he has to move out. He's living in a private care facility now. We realize what we did to you. We sacrificed you for 20 years. We were blind, Nate. Nate looked at his mother. He looked at his father. He remembered the endless nights he had spent sitting in the dark living room, waiting for them to bring back dinner after taking Wesley to the amusement park. He remembered his 7th birthday, when Mom took his birthday cake away because Wesley wasn't allowed to eat sugar. He remembered Dad handing his favorite bicycle to Wesley saying, "You can ride a bus, Nate. Your brother can't." For 20 years, he had bled himself dry, waiting for a single scrap of warmth, a single moment where he was chosen first. And now here they were offering him the world. And he didn't want a single piece of it. You didn't realize you were wrong because you suddenly loved me, Nate said, his voice soft, calm, and deadly clear. You realized you were wrong because, without me there to carry the weight, Wesley turned his demands onto you. Mom froze, her breath catching in her throat. When I was there, I was the sponge that absorbed all his tantrums, all his medical bills, all his emotional blackmail. Nate continued, looking straight into Dad's pale face. I was the easy sacrifice. The moment I left, you had to deal with him yourselves. And you realized what a black hole he truly is. Dad opened his mouth, but no sound came out. A deep, burning flush of shame crept up his neck. Nate turned his eyes onto Stefani. And you, Stefani, Nate said gently. You don't miss me. You miss your illusion of being a perfect, magnanimous person. You liked having a quiet, obedient husband who waited at home while you played savior to my brother. You liked the control. No, that's not true. Stefani screamed, falling to her knees on the marble floor of the gallery, uncaring that the guards and gallery staff were watching. I love you, Nate. I've loved you for 7 years. I can't sleep. I can't work. Every time I look at our apartment, I see you. Please, give me one more chance. Just one. She reached out, trying to grab the hem of his trousers, her tears soaking into the polished floor. Nate took 2 steps back, completely out of her reach. He pulled the old, worn paintbrush out of his pocket, the one she had bought him on their very first trip to the art store 7 years ago, the only thing he had brought with him to Lynden Bay. He held it out in his palm. Stefani looked at the brush, hope flaring wildly in her bloodshot eyes. You kept it? You kept my brush? Nate didn't answer. He moved his hands, placed his thumbs against the middle of the wooden handle, and applied a steady, firm pressure. Crack! The old oak handle snapped cleanly in half. Nate opened his hand and let the 2 broken pieces fall onto the floor between them. They landed with a dull, final thud. Spring came, Stefani, Nate said softly, looking at her one last time. I just don't need your warmth anymore. He turned on his heel, walked past the display of his bright, sunlit paintings, and headed up the spiral staircase. Nate! Nate! Stefani's hysterical screams echoed through the grand hall, accompanied by the sound of his mother's weeping and his father's heavy, broken sobs. Security stepped forward, firmly guiding the 3 sobbing figures toward the exit doors. Nate reached the top of the stairs, walked into his private studio, and closed the thick wooden door. The heavy door shut out the noise, the screaming, and the past. Nate walked over to his easel, picked up a fresh brush, dipped it into a pool of vibrant, brilliant gold paint, and touched it to the clean canvas. The light outside the window was warm, bright, and boundless. And for the first time in his life, it belonged entirely to him.